The scene shifts to the town of Bright Town. The air feels heavy with tension. Knights patrol the streets, armed and watchful. The faces of ordinary citizens show their worry. These knights scan the area, searching for something. They do not notice a shadowy figure lurking in a dark alley. This figure is Lam. He silently observes from the shadows, confused by the presence of the patrol. Suspecting the holy knights are involved, Lam leaves the deserted alley. Lam walks for a long time, without hearing anything about Loda's group. This strangeness makes him hurry his steps. Using an elf's invisibility spell, he remains unnoticed as he searches for information. Lam decides to go to the town square, where many people are gathered. In the town square, Lam notices a group of armed individuals gathered in front of a large bulletin board. The board displays a ranking list of the knights in the town. While the ranking list isn't particularly interesting, it shows 1 platinum level adventurer, 2 silver level ones, and the rest bronze level. What catches Lam's eye is Loda's name at the top of the list. This confirms that Loda has grown stronger. Lam knows this information is useful. He needs to gather more data and plan carefully. Rushing into things will lead to failure in his quest for revenge. Lam quickly blends into the crowd and moves through the streets. Having been human himself, he knows the best place to gather information is a tavern. To Lam's surprise, even before entering the tavern, he hears a familiar voice. A cunning smile spreads across his face. Inside, besides Loda and the knights of the temple, there is also Ephra. They are happily drinking together. One knight raises his glass and expresses gratitude to Ephra and Loda for saving him from a forest ape monster. Ephra says this is Captain Loda's victory, and that she wouldn't have been able to help without his exceptional skills. Another man argues that the monster was too weak. He says the knight's failure to defeat it proves his weakness. This sarcastic remark enrages the knight. He tells the man that their story doesn't concern him and orders him to leave. A heated argument begins, and they are on the verge of a fight. The tavern owner quickly diffuses the situation. He reveals that the dragon on Dragon Island is currently in its breeding season. It has been kidnapping livestock and humans to eat. He suggests the two go defeat the dragon instead of causing trouble in the tavern. These words from the tavern owner catch Lam's attention. He senses worry that if the dragon attacks this town, the capital's reinforcements won't arrive in time. Even if all the adventurers in the town unite, they wouldn't withstand the attack of those ferocious dragons. Disaster seems to be looming over the town. The atmosphere in the tavern becomes tense. Loda breaks the silence with a laugh. He says a few dragons are nothing to worry about. He confidently introduces the Holy Knight as his teacher. He says once she arrives, she will help them defeat the dragons. The king won't need to send his army after the situation is resolved. Their group will return to the capital. This news excites the crowd. They're astonished to learn that Loda's teacher is a holy knight. They feel confident knowing she will help defeat the dragons. If this is successful, Loda will become the town's hero. Flattered by the praise, Loda proudly stands up and raises a toast to everyone. He celebrates the Holy Knight's arrival and their imminent victory over the dragons. While everyone is happily drinking, Lam has a different plan. He needs to make the most of this opportunity. Lam stands up, pays his bill, and leaves. His departure catches Loda's attention. Loda asks why Lam is leaving without joining them for drinks. Lam turns his head and looks at Loda. He says they will have plenty of opportunities to drink together in the future. Then he leaves. His actions draw the attention of Loda and his men, provoking their anger. Time flies by, and the people in town cheerfully celebrate the Holy Knight's arrival. Inside a church, a blonde-haired woman is praying. Loda stands behind her. He politely addresses her as Master. He says the dragons are wreaking havoc everywhere and are getting closer to the town. No one dares to let their livestock out, as the dragons might attack. The woman takes up her weapon and stands up. She is beautiful, with captivating blonde hair. Her silver armor gives her a commanding presence. She asks Loda about the things she requested him to prepare. Loda reports that he has prepared 10 dragon hunting crossbows and placed them at the highest points in the town. The woman seems pleased. She tells Loda to arrange everything well, as a mistake would be a huge embarrassment. The woman walks outside, and the crowd below is immediately in an uproar. It is the first time they have seen the holy knight. They praise her beauty and wonder which man could possibly win her heart. They think she is an unattainable existence that even the king wouldn't dare to express an opinion about. The woman looks at the worried crowd and says the situation is very dangerous. It is unnecessary to gather so many people here. She orders the knights to disperse the crowd, but it seems that is no longer necessary. The commotion draws the attention of the dragon. It charges at the town, terrifying everyone. One unlucky person is taken by the dragon. The woman anxiously announces this is just a scout dragon. Once it appears, more dragons will surely attack. Loda is told to take his men to the wall and prepare to fight outside the town. On a cliff outside the town, a goblin scurries along. He informs his leader that the dragons are coming. From what he observed, there are many guards on the wall. The goblin asks what he should do next. The leader, who is Lam, tells him to be silent and wait. It is not time to act yet. Lam has brought his army here, and he is waiting for the dragons to inflict damage upon the town. Then it will be his chance to seek revenge. A horde of dragons appears in the sky, flying toward the City of Light. Suddenly, a powerful golden light pierces the chest of one dragon, killing it instantly. Loda and Defraya look up in shock. They see the sword saint on the city wall. She has fired the deadly shot with a crossbow. The sword saint quickly instructs the knight beside her on how to use the crossbows to hunt dragons. The knights understand her command and begin loading the crossbows. They start shooting down the approaching dragons. Excitement grows as their attacks bring down dragon after dragon. As they fight, a knight notices ominous purple clouds and thunder in the sky. Suddenly, a massive dragon appears. This dragon is larger and more powerful than the others. Its roar is so loud that it makes some knights wince in pain. This is the mother of purple gold. The knights realize their crossbows are useless against her, and they begin to retreat in fear. The mother dragon stares down at the knights. She raises her head and unleashes a fiery attack. The blaze destroys the crossbows on the wall, forcing the knights to flee. They fear that the city is about to fall. At that moment, the sword saint invokes a blue magic circle. She draws her sword as powerful energy surrounds her. She reassures the knights, telling them to leave the mother dragon to her and continue defending the city. As the mother dragon launches another fiery assault, the sword saint uses her sword energy storm technique to create a barrier around the city, blocking the attack. The dragons outside the barrier continue their assault. Lin Tian, watching from a hill with his goblin forces, is impressed by the sword saint's power. He sees this as the perfect opportunity to strike. He orders the goblins to descend into the city now that the barrier is down. With the dragons inside, the city is set ablaze. Amid the chaos, Loda, injured from battling a dragon, realizes how dire the situation is. A man runs through the streets, shouting that goblins are invading. Alarmed, Loda knows the situation is getting worse. More dragons descend, attacking the knights, who barely manage to defend themselves. Loda and Defraya decide to confront the goblins. They chase after those pursuing a woman, unaware they are walking into a trap. Goblins hide on the rooftops, ready to ambush them. As they near a sewer, a goblin attacks Loda, cutting his leg and causing him to fall. The goblins quickly capture Defraya with a net. She screams for help as more goblins surround Loda, who lies injured on the ground. The city is in chaos. Houses are burning, the sky is filled with dragons, and goblins overrun the streets. Seeing that Loda is injured and Defraya has been captured, two knights decide to help them. They rush forward, but are ambushed by Lin Tian, who approaches silently and decapitates them before they can react. Freya, terrified, watches in horror as Loda, enraged, tries to fight back but is knocked unconscious by Lin Tian. The goblins tie up by Freya and prepare to drag her and Loda out of the city through the sewers. Lin Tian then leads a group of goblins to attack the city's archers. Hearing the screams, the Sword Saint realizes something is terribly wrong. She can't believe goblins are attacking at such a critical moment. Distracted by the chaos, she fails to notice that the mother dragon has transformed into human form. The dragon, now watching the situation with satisfaction, smiles as she observes the knights struggling to defend themselves. The Sword Saint, sensing the growing danger, turns her focus back to the battle, aware that the fate of the city rests in her hands. The mother dragon leaps into the air, surrounded by powerful energy, as she prepares to attack the Sword Saint. The Sword Saint stands firm, staring at the dragon with a mocking expression. She asks if the dragon is worried and decides to see how much dragon blood it has. Just before the mother dragon can approach, the Sword Saint unsheathes her sword. She uses her ultimate technique, steel gale cuts, and swings her sword, launching powerful cuts toward the dragon. The mother dragon quickly puts both arms in front of her face, clenching her teeth tightly. She manages to block the attack at the last second. The Sword Saint looks at her calmly, thinking that the dragon mother issue is almost resolved. She wonders if Loda has taken care of the dragons and goblins. While she is deep in thought, a strong explosion occurs in the city, sending several knights flying into the air. The Sword Saint turns her head back and feels confused upon seeing the explosion. She soon realizes that the riot is not over yet. The mother dragon begins to stand up and stare at the Sword Saint. She smiles when she sees that the goblins have arrived just in time. Now that the Sword Saint is distracted, the mother dragon takes advantage of this moment. She transforms into energy and begins to flee, saying goodbye. While the Sword Saint's body is surrounded by powerful energy, she turns around wondering what is happening. The mother dragon flies away, telling her to wait until she heals, saying she will not let her go so easily. The Sword Saint puts her hand near her mouth and looks at the dragon with a piercing gaze. Upon seeing the mother dragon escape, she realizes this is not good. She wipes her mouth with her hand, and with a determined look, says she will go to Dragon Island to kill the entire dragon race. Several hours later, in the Dark City, the Sword Saint arrives. She finishes off many of the goblins lurking around. Holding her sword in one hand, she extends the other hand to one side and asks the knights where Loda is. She thinks they are useless, since they cannot even kill some goblins. In front of her, a wounded knight sits on the ground next to a scared woman with torn clothes. With one hand on the ground and the other over his wound, the knight reveals that Loda and I have been captured by goblins. The Sword Saint approaches them, and upon hearing this, she clenches her teeth tightly. With a furious look, she wonders how this is possible. The city is filled with knights' corpses. The wounded knight tells her these goblins are unusual, with strength comparable to a great species. He adds that not even Loda has been able to defeat them. The Sword Saint looks at the ground without saying a word. She turns her back on the knight, clenches her fist tightly, and decides to go after all the goblin tribes in the haunted forests. The woman next to her looks at her with a confused expression. Just before she can leave, the woman grabs her arm with both hands, starts crying, and asks her to stay. No one knows if the evil goblins will return to attack. People in the city approach the area and bow before the Sword Saint. They explain they are from the town and the Empire and ask her to stay with them. She looks at the ground with a lost gaze and thinks they are right. Compared to a captured member of the hero squad, protecting the people of the temple is her duty. If Loda is going to blame someone, he can only blame himself for being too weak to kill some goblins. She decides to ask for help from the royal family. Meanwhile, in the goblin tribe, The goblins and elves are doing their daily tasks. Little goblins inform everyone that the boss has returned. Lin Tian and the others come back, having captured Ai and Loda. They tie the two humans by their hands and throw them onto the ground near a rock. The goblin wearing a crest turns his back on them and, as he walks away, orders the others to behave. Loda, with his hands tied, looks at the goblins with a furious gaze. The goblins approach an elf and scold her. Loda explains to Ai that even these goblins hold many elves captive. Ai begins to blush and, while panting heavily, tells him there might be a hero in this tribe. Loda asks her if she has recovered a bit. Ai clasps her hands together, closes her eyes, and begins to use her power, causing golden energy to appear around her body. She says the poison is very strong, and her body still needs time to recover. At that moment, Lin Tian appears and smiles upon seeing the poison's effect has worn off quickly. He praises Ai, saying her recovery ability is incredible. She opens her eyes and starts trembling. Loda looks at Lin Tian with a gaze full of hatred. Just then, a goblin appears, grabbing Loda's arm with one hand and placing the other on his head. Lin Tian grabs Ai by the leg. She panics and asks him how he knows her name and what he is trying to do. Lin Tian smiles and asks if she really wants to know his plans. He digs his sharp nails into her leg, causing her to scream in agony. While she screams, Lin Tian enjoys the moment. Beside them, Loda tries to intervene, but a goblin grabs him by the arms. Loda cannot help but feel angry. With a furious look, he shouts at Lin Tian to stop. The goblin slaps him in the face and orders him not to shout at the boss. Due to the blow, Loda falls to the ground. As he gets up, Lin Tian pulls his sharp nails from Ai's leg. Loda looks at Lin Tian with disdain and realizes he is a goblin with high intelligence. He asks if Lin Tian has not considered the consequences of capturing them, adding that the Sword Saint's power could kill the entire goblin tribe in one blow. Lin Tian smiles and reveals that the Sword Saint will also be his prey, but it is not yet time. He has already sent someone to hide their tracks. Even if she wants to find them, she will not be able to locate them here. Lin Tian stands up, wipes his hand with a handkerchief, and orders the goblins to let some second-generation goblins kill more monsters in the forest. While Ai rides in pain on the ground, the goblins approach them. One goblin places his hand over his chest, bows his head before Lin Tian, and replies with an understanding. The operation has become so big that humans will not be able to let it pass. Lin Tian puts his foot on Loda's chest and tells him he is going to ask questions, and Loda must answer. If he does not cooperate, Lin Tian is not sure which part of his body will be missing. Loda clenches his teeth, thinking this is not good.